This episode is a continuation of the conversation that I had with Amir Heibel. If you missed that conversation, I will link that episode in the description. At the conclusion of the last episode, we were discussing the schizophrenic nature in which the United States treats their minority populations. Just a reminder before we begin this episode, if you have any comments or questions about this episode, feel free to email us at roamingwanderings@gmail.com. And now, let's start the show.
So you were going to say America's schizophrenic?
Yeah, America's schizophrenic.
Yeah.
They want to steal all of the culture, identity, and media that Black America creates, and then they also think of them as the other uneducated and poor, and it's their fault that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So America is schizophrenic in that belief. It's almost like the United States is trying to, rather than address the fact of the past abuse that it's had, that it's just has too
current abuse.
Well,
I think that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing to me, and that was also what gets me upset about these protests and everything. And my mom and my brother, because we're all human, we're like, oh, people are yelling about this thing that's bad, and so things are gonna change, or things are different now. People feel different now because people are yelling about it. But I'm watching it and I'm like, because I've experienced it my whole life. I've experienced people who say something, because there's always that disconnect. They're saying something and they're saying they believe this something, but when they're confronted with another side of it, it's like a different story. And so everybody is like, Black Lives Matter, arrest Breonna Taylor's murderers, whatever other things they say. Slogans. But then in the same breath, it's like once you see that black homeless guy on, I don't know, Pico Boulevard or whatever, you look at him a certain way, or you see it and you just think of it as normal, but it's not normal. It's a part of that same history. It's a part of that same story. You disconnect the ideology and the actual issue. And so a lot of people end up being complacent and feeling good about themselves because they feel like their ideology is good, but their feet aren't doing it.
Sure.
And their mouths aren't actually doing it. You know what I'm saying?
I definitely do. It's just exactly what we were talking about earlier. People will vote D all the way down, but then step over the homeless guy, to get their Starbucks or whatever. Or
exactly.
Feel like they're somehow contributing to civil rights by owning an apartment in San Diego or something.
Yeah, and there's not much you can do about it, and it gets hard. And I've had this conversation again with my brothers and sisters about what do we do about it, and what can we do about it. And last time I talked to my brother about it, he was just like, bro, you're mixed. You can get German citizenship. Just go. And I was like, yeah. I mean, low key, because there's not that much of a fight that you could put up for it. It doesn't look like it's going to... The country feels like it's going to...
die.
To dissociate before that is resolved.
So you don't see any recovery of the United States, huh?
I don't.
Yeah.
I really honestly don't. I don't know that I've ever seen or felt like I've been in the United States that was good. Ever. Ever. Because because I grew up with a lot of Arab kids. One of my best friends was Yemeni. Another one was Ukrainian. And growing up in the Obama era, and then probably the people who grew up in the Bush era, I don't remember it too well. But I just know about people who told stories, people who would tell me stories about their family coming as refugees from Pakistan or this place or that place, and then being black and seeing my family and seeing where I live at and seeing where they live at and just watching the whole story. Nothing's ever felt content. Nothing ever felt okay.
Do you think that's a United States thing? Is that a human thing?
I feel like you could argue that it is a human thing, but at the same time, there are places that do absolutely do their best to mitigate it.
So, we were talking about Germany earlier. What does Germany do that the United States doesn't?
What does Germany do that the United States doesn't? Well, Angela Merkel's a G, so...
she's pretty chill.
There's that part. But what does Germany do that America doesn't? Germany, it has a different context for one. So as somebody who is studying what I'm studying to go into a to work specifically with the natural environment and how it interacts with the built environment.
We should also, if we ever have a chance to do a second podcast ever, we should actually talk about that at some point rather than just like talking about race.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. That sounds sick. But dealing with how nature and cities basically interact with one another. Europe as a whole, specifically Northern Europe, just throughout history has done a fantastic job to build infrastructure that is low impact on the environment that it's in. And like Germany specifically, a lot of the public spaces are recycled old spaces, like old warehouses that get turned into things like kind of like this. Yeah, like right. Cleveland's going that way. A lot of America's going that way, but the policy isn't there. In Europe, the policy is there. In a lot of Europe, the policy is there. And it sucks. It's another thing that sucks, and it bothers me when white people mention Sweden and Norway and Denmark and Belgium and Germany. Yeah. Because of how their social policies have been so good for their community. Yeah. From medical to education to all of the above. Because they're such small populations. But the fact that they're majority white, people are like, white people know what they're doing, that we're better or whatever. But those places, because of how public transportation works, because of how schooling works, because of how housing works, because of green spaces, because of social welfare that they have, not welfare in a way where people are,
our system's fucked.
Yeah, ours is, but in a lot of Europe, the social welfare system works in a way that benefits everybody.
Yeah, it incentivizes and
yeah, like, bro, shouts to NHS also, the National Health Service in the UK. Because even, like, amongst Brexit and, like, everything else, they're still taking care of their people. Yeah. To an extent. Because I still got some problems with England, too.
No, I mean, yeah.
Did you hear about Grenfell?
No.
So in England, you have tower housing blocks, right? You have estates, as they call them. Council housing estates, right? And there was one in London called Grenfell, and so the story goes that they didn't want to dish out the money that they needed to get proper cladding on the building, like the coverings for the building, so that it was safe. So they bought like flammable cladding that was cheaper.
Gotcha.
Clad the building, cover the building, and then a fire happens and there aren't enough escape routes there. Smoke is rising, the fire is rising, mad people die in the building, and it just never, it turned out awful afterwards. All the people that were there ended up, some of the people got other places, but the building was all refugees mainly, and so a lot of people ended up homeless, a lot of people ended up deported, and the government just didn't do much about it, didn't do much to help.
Is the United States just too big?
I'm always one for secession, bro. That's so sick to me. If we had, like, zones, that would be so ill. If there was just, like, a whatever western area, northeast area, that'd be sick. But maybe the U.S. is too big. I mean, there's no reason to have these massive countries that we have. There's no reason Russia should be that big. There's so many different ethnic groups throughout that entire Siberia. Or taiga, whatever you want to call it.
I mean, it always just is, like, depressing when it's, like, you have this, like, united group and then they just, like, break apart. But, I mean, I guess that's just how it goes.
You think that's depressing?
A little bit.
Why?
Because, a dream to get out of this flying spaceship called Earth and to, like, do something above that. I would hope that
we would be able to unite and then, like, build something and then do some crazy stuff.
Yeah. And if we can't, like, handle our own shit about, like, treating everybody right, and so we have to segregate ourselves.
Do you not rock with the EU?
It's not bad. I mean, it's a stopgap to...
I don't know what that term means.
It's
I've never heard it before. Stopgap?
Yeah, it's just like it's like a halfway measure.
Like a holdover?
Kind of. Yeah, it's like a halfway measure for trying to create, like, a united like quote unquote continent, European shelf. But you know, if you have individual countries within it,
you think that that's a bad thing, having the individual countries within it?
I don't know. If you did it right, maybe not.
Because I'm thinking, because that's what Africa should have been. That's what the United States should have been. That's what everywhere should be, in my opinion. Is like, because we've been working on the EU since before World War One, basically.
Sure.
Like from the League of Nations, all of that.
I mean, I guess it's kind of been effective in the sense that, like, I couldn't imagine France going to war with Germany or anything.
Yeah, that's super effective. And if
I just mean like in terms of like, do I like that EU? Like, do I think that the bureaucracy is like effective? Like, not really. I like the idea of it.
Same. I really enjoy the idea of it. But yeah, no. At the same time though, in practice, as like a trade agreement and as like just a mutual benefit agreement on every front, it serves a good purpose. Like, it serves a really good purpose.
I mean, I guess that kind of was what like the Nafta was supposed to be.
Yeah, but we suck. So.
Well, I do have to say that there has been like anti-globalist sentiment, and I don't think it's purely like.
I don't really believe in globalism like that.
But I mean, that's kind of what that kind of propagates. Though I guess that's just like a manipulation of trying to have a united nations, or because like.
But like
the ideal is that you have like continuity across all countries, but what it all boils down to is you have trade agreements, so you can agree that like you have labor like distribution that's like effective.
Yeah.
So like I think Trump partially won because people were like, oh well, you know, we're not going to have as many jobs in the United States, but it's going to help people in China get jobs. That's how they sold it. But really, we're trying to make as much money as possible, and we're going to move the jobs over here because we can pay them less. So I think like that's...
It's really, really difficult to think about the future.
Yeah.
Because my response to that would just be like, we have to figure out a new ideal. And I know ideals aren't real, and that's not supposed to rhyme, but they're not. And so we know that the real thing is probably always what's going to happen. Closer to reality, somebody's hungry, they're gonna probably steal or kill to get the food if they can't grow it. In that analogy, somebody's hungry, they'll probably steal or kill to get the food because it's the quickest, it's the simplest, it's the easiest, but we can also still teach people to grow stuff. And
sure.
In that meaning that we can come up with a
systemic, or
we can come up with a systemic way, whether it's probably through education, to maintain local or regional, I don't want to say autonomy, but like identity,
sure.
Identity, but at the same time, because I don't think that globalism, at the same time, connection, but I don't think that globalism is cool because there's no reason in my mind why you should be like eating pineapple in France in January. That is like,
I get what you're saying.
For the sake of like,
I mean, I guess that's kind of what we were talking about with like boomers having like an ideal.
You got whatever you want whenever you wanted it.
Right. We should definitely go back to like local farms and shit like that for sure.
Yeah, like there's no reason whatsoever that you should be getting pineapple in France in January. Yeah. There's no reason for it. There's no reason that you should be getting scallops from the Indian Ocean in, I don't know, Winnipeg. Like, right. Where you're nowhere near them. Yeah. Like, what are you doing? Why is that there? And that just also helps along sterilization of cultures. And I think cultures are important because, like you said, when we talked last time, is that you need to have a story. Groups need to have a story. They just do. Yeah.
I mean, that's the only way that people can define themselves, is by having some sort of long-standing narrative about everyone. I mean, like they say, everyone's the protagonist of their own story. So yeah, that goes from the individual all the way up to the corporation.
Right.
And the corporation, their only story right now is that they produce good to increase revenue, and that's not a good enough story.
Right. Absolutely. It's not a good story at all.
So,
wanted to talk about race, I guess.
I mean, I feel like sometimes you gotta like lay the groundwork before you can like talk about other shit. I'm sure if you want to talk about like an environmental perspective, I mean, like, it's not like race is going to go away when you're going to talk about that stuff, for sure.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, like, when...
And it compounds it a lot.
Yeah. Especially, like, refugees, environmental refugees and shit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. Just, like, from when we were talking about black people in the South and flood zones and in... You've heard of Cancer Alley before?
Yeah, like, down Mississippi, right?
Louisiana, but yeah. That same little area. Yeah. Right.
I mean, I was assuming it was like the floodplains that was like drainage of all of the rivers and stuff that had the industrial...
it's the Delta area.
Yeah.
Exactly. All that industrial stuff. But down through Baton Rouge, specifically in Louisiana, mainly, that was all I was saying.
Gotcha.
Yeah, man, just like the positioning of people that are not white, mainly, usually. That's a whole other conversation.
I mean, it's funny too. I mean, not funny, but like, it's just like the United States is so big, you know, and and yet, you know, it's not big enough for the two of us, or some, quote unquote, two of us.
It's not big enough for the 25,000 of us, bro.
Yeah.
I don't understand why. Like, why would you give natives Oklahoma when there's nobody that lives? Like, basically nobody that lives. First and foremost, why would you move natives at all? But, like, why would you just be like, okay, we're going to send you guys all to Oklahoma and some of you to, like, Arizona, New Mexico? Nobody lives in this entire area. Nobody lives anywhere over here. Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota. There are some reservations in Standing Rock Reservation is in South Dakota and hits into North Dakota.
But I mean, like, they took their big rock and they put some dead guys on it.
Yeah, and then like black people, bro, you could have let us like just move up there and just have our own thing and like build it and then move out and be actually on the same playing field as everybody else. It's like it's not fair to open a door and then have the person that's walking in. Imagine somebody knocks on your door right now and just slit off at the knees, and you're just like, all right, come in.
Well, the worst part is where, like, I've talked to boomers before, and they're like, it's not right to not let people work for their lot, and it's like you cut them off at the legs, so now like you're mad at them for not like standing up when you like cut their shoes or you cut their feet off. It's like, you might need to like help them like get back up before you like, you know, expect them to run.
When somebody immigrates from another country to this country, or from any country to any country, if you're going from one place to the other, the first thing you do is find out, where am I going to stay at? That's the first thing you do. If you don't have anywhere to stay, if you get kicked out of your houses or get forced into like places where you can't live or can't survive, or there are no jobs, or there is no food, like, bro, what do you like? What opportunity do you have to work your way up?
And that's the thing I've noticed too, is that there's this disconnect about immigration, that like there's like there's good immigrants. It's like, no, they're not. They're 100% are not good immigrants. It's just that the ones that live really far away just have enough money to afford to move here, so they usually afford to like pay their kids to go to some top quality schools and shit. And the ones that, you know, live near us, you know, that have been disrupted by 100 years of colonization and like destabilization. When those immigrants come up, they don't have the infrastructure that some of the farther away ones have.
That goes like directly back to the first point that we were talking about, where it's like, where you said, but don't you think if people are more educated, more college educated, that they are more on that side, more liberal, right? They know what they know. And that's what I said earlier. But to your point about they don't have infrastructure where they're coming from, or a good enough infrastructure where they're coming from to have a solid ground when they get to a country that has a longer history of building solid infrastructure.
For particular groups.
It's like, show people how long it takes to earn what they earn in the country that they live in, or what they were earning when they got their first job working minimum wage at some job that they would deem inhumane. Show them how long it takes for somebody from Turkmenistan to get that much money. Just allow people to understand how the world works and what it looks like and what people look like and where they come from and how they how they interact with one another. Like, it's not fair to say everybody
But I don't think they
should
want
be.
that.
I know they don't want it, but that's what everybody needs.
Yeah. I mean, if you had like a unified, educated, I mean, that's like basically like the first stage of like Russian communism was we should like inform the peasants that they are being oppressed, right? And they like went into all of the fields and tried to inform them, and they were like, get the fuck out of here! I'm just trying to eat, right?
Right.
There's a Maslow hierarchy of needs. Right. And like, this might sound partly conspiratorial. I would not be surprised that they're like quote unquote religious people who don't advocate for birth control and things like that. They don't really care about birth control. But if you have a population that is like prone to have teen pregnancy and is unable to like establish like solid footings and like solid income before they have children, then they're going to be an established, consistent working class that they can overutilize or
take care of their children.
Take advantage of, that like they can use as like a lower class worker. Yeah,
no, that part too, 100%. It's just like, I don't know if it's like I don't know if it's worth fighting for in America at this point. Like, that's where I get to. Because it seems like there are too many people that are too convinced of whatever propaganda they learned when they were younger about what this place is and what it's for and why it's good.
That's why I was like, it's good. I mean, maybe in like, I don't know. How long do you think the United States has?
I'm praying for not that much longer. No, really? I mean, I would say like, not has that much for what exactly?
Like a consistent, stable government. Like,
I mean, we don't have a consistent, stable government right now.
I mean, the legislation still meets regularly. Like, we still have an election.
But the legislation was like,
I mean, they haven't done anything.
The entire administration was getting shifted and moved and rearranged constantly throughout the majority of Trump's presidency.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess we'll see, like, if Trump gets another 4 years, then the democracy as an institution, like, is on shaky ground. So
I don't believe that we will have democracy if he gets another 4.
I mean, he's already questioning.
But to your point earlier, or to your question earlier, though, we haven't had a stable situation in low key from the police officers, oh my gosh, thinking about it gets even worse. It's been longer. But if we're talking about, so stable government you could argue it's been out the window for a minute, but I would say like maybe Obama's second situation, maybe earlier, if I really wanted to like dig into my head and think about it. But if we're talking about how long does America have to have steady, regular trade with other countries to be able to maintain its population and state borders without concerted revolt? Maybe like 15 years.
You think so?
I mean,
I'd give it like 25.
25?
25 to 50.
You think 50? We're in 2020 right now. They say by 2050 it's going to be a situation already.
What will be a situation?
Just the effects of global warming on our crop production, our domestic crop production.
Yeah. I just feel like I could definitely see, if we don't change the ways that we handle things, we could definitely just become, like, we can just, like, close our borders and become more authoritarian.
But that's not stable, though.
I'm not saying it's stable. I'm just saying.
But you asked about how long do I think we could be stable.
I'm saying that would be when it would start to unravel.
Okay. Okay, I can see that. But I think that's happening right now. Like I told you, this looks like Viktor Orban to me. Like exactly like that.
Okay.
And that situation isn't good. It's not great. It's not great. It's not great.
But I mean, you don't think all of the rioting that's occurred, like you don't think that
Rioting?
You don't like that? Or
No, I just had to make sure you said rioting. I didn't know.
Just like the general. I mean, like sure, COVID didn't.
Bro,
help.
did you see what happened with Breonna Taylor killers the other night? Like last night?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Is that not crazy to you?
I just know the law around.
Bro, they charged one dude for possibly maybe hitting somebody on the other side of a wall.
Totally agree. The way that the judicial system is in effect currently is completely broken. Yeah. But the ways that the Constitution is being used means that a police officer doesn't need to justify their actions. They just have to have a reasonable expectation, like reasonable knowledge of a situation for them to like be able to justify whatever they did. Right. And I don't think that's right, but that means that you can stop at every definition of that. But like it just means that like you can stop at any second during like any crime. Like the police officers don't know if this person has a gun, so it's like a reasonable expectations that like this person does have a gun. So we have to like the cop has to assume that person has a gun. So like because this person reached to like it's their elbow, that means that they might be reaching for a gun. So it's like within reasonable expectation to shoot that person. Yeah. Totally disagree with that. Like total. Like that ideology, right? With that framing of that scenario, but because that happened, I'm not surprised. Like there is not going to be justice for anyone,
but like
until you fix the legal system,
right? But I mean, and I don't know enough about the situation. Not the Breonna Taylor. I don't know enough about that situation either, really, because I just try to stay out of it at this point.
Yeah,
just because
it's just exhausting. Yeah.
I mean, it's just like I don't even really want to. I don't
want to be here.
I mean, no, seriously, especially. Did you hear about Dijon Kizzee? Mm-hmm. He was riding his bike in LA and got shot.
I didn't hear that.
He was riding his bike. He was carrying a pile of clothes or something. The police stopped him because he was riding his bike the opposite direction. I don't know how long the police talked to him or if they even got to talk to him, but he drops the pile of clothes and there was a gun in the pile of clothes and he's running away and they kill him, right? Which is like, why? Right. First off, because like he didn't have the gun. He wasn't pointing the gun. It wasn't in his hand even a little bit. He's running away, whatever. But that's his own situation. But like maybe 6 to 7 months. No, like 3 months before pandemic started, right? Mm-hmm. I was riding my bike and I got pulled over for riding my bike. Like just for riding my bike really. And they just asked me where I was going and what I was doing or whatever. In Santa Monica. And then they saw my license and they were like, oh, that's your address? Okay, never mind. And I was like, bro, y'all are trash. But like just to think about having to deal with just people in general and people looking at you and thinking of whatever they want to think of about you just off of sight is like its own thing, and that's exhausting. And so I don't want to continue to like
exist in a place that does that.
But like eat it up. I don't want to like do that all day every day. It's bothersome. But what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna. I mean, I'm gonna pull it up here in a minute. But there's this YouTube channel that show footage of like different like police events, and they kind of like go stop by stop and kind of explain like some of the legal explanations of why they might be doing something. Yeah. And whatever like what code they might be using to excuse whatever bullshit that they're trying to pull off. Yeah. It's interesting because like especially for like traffic stops, like the cop just needs to be able to say that they had a suspicion of something, and it literally does not matter what the suspicion is. Right. Like you can just say like you smell weed, and then that like is it. Like that's all you need, and it's fascinating because it's whenever politicians talk about being tough on crime, no one really thinks what that actually means. Yeah. Because crime is just like a manifestation of something. Everything else, right? And if you're being tough on crime, it means that you're being tough on people, and usually
you're being tough on people.
Yeah, and you're being tough on people who are poor and usually are put in circumstances that are hard to exist in the first place. Yeah. It's like hard being poor, just like getting a ticket and you can't afford like whatever else you're doing.
I mean, yeah, no. When you are in a certain financial situation, whether or not your tire just goes flat on the way to work is like the difference between a whole bunch.
Right.
And yeah, no, absolutely. Poverty is not a game. It's not a game, and it's not something that you can just throw money at either. Yeah. Which is what happens a lot of the time.
Like, I work at the hospital, and I feel like really privileged because I feel like I am helping people, and also at the same time, like, I'm able to work in like this pandemic when there's a lot of people who aren't able to work, and it's just like crazy that politicians are treating people like pawns.
Right.
You know, I don't know. After this pandemic, we are not going to look. The United States is not going to look healthier for sure.
Oh, it's not gonna look. It's gonna look completely different. I think. I just feel like there's so many industries that, like, I don't know how the medical industry is going to look after this, and I don't understand how the insurance industry is going to look after this. Specifically, those two. Yeah. Just because, like, so many things that have happened during this last little bit, people losing their jobs, the government giving out whatever amount of money they gave out to people getting, because there was a big spike in the amount that insurance companies were making because of how much was going on, of course. Right? So people having their medical insurance, people having housing insurance because of the hurricanes and different things, and also the riots. So like businesses that were cashing in on their insurance for their properties and stuff. But like after this, there has to be some sort of restructuring of how those two industries interact. Or all three of them, the real estate, medicine, and insurance. Yeah. And that's going to be a huge thing because we're still going through like lockdowns and quarantines in a lot of parts of the country.
Is that so? I know that you're usually you live in California normally. Do you see yourself going back there? Because I know that there's kind of like a.
What do you mean going? Because I'm flying back in a second.
Because I just know like a lot of people are not, like a lot of people are like flighting out of there and like not coming back. Like my brother lives in San Diego. He works for a tech company in San Diego.
How long has he been there?
2 years.
Okay, see, I went to high school there.
Yeah, I mean he's not been there long, but.
And my little brother is in high school.
I just know like he just bought a house in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And he's gonna be coming to and from his house in San Diego and the one in Pennsylvania. And I know that part of that is that he like likes to hang out with us, but also I think like there are a lot of people like a lot of comedians are moving to Austin. Yeah. From what I hear,
a lot of people are moving to Texas for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of the black population, specific, not to make this a race thing again, but a lot of the black population is migrating outside of Los Angeles because of gentrification in a lot of historically black areas like Inglewood and Crenshaw and Baldwin Village and Baldwin Heights and View Park and all those areas, and going to places like Palmdale and Palm Desert, which are desert cities outside of LA, and then also to Texas, to Austin and to Houston, mainly Austin though, and some to Dallas, some going back to Detroit. There's a lot of black people leaving Detroit and going to Austin. A lot of people are moving to Texas, I guess, in general.
Well, I'm telling everyone, if anyone's listening, you should move to Cleveland for sure.
You shouldn't. Don't move to Cleveland. I left Cleveland in 2014. I thought about coming back when I came back this time, but like, don't come to Cleveland. It's not. Nah, stay where you are. Build it up.
But I mean, like, California's already built up.
I mean, if you're from California, if you're from LA, if you're from California, if you're from LA, if you're from San Francisco, you're from Oakland, if you're from New York and you're from like New York City proper. Yeah. Sure, go somewhere else maybe. I'm just saying, like, if you're black though and you can afford it or you want to afford it, stay. If you're Latino, if you're Asian, if you're anything that's not white, or if you're cool white, that's kind of wild to say. If you're like a Polish person from Greenpoint, because Greenpoint is like a not historically Polish neighborhood, but a very Polish neighborhood, stay there and hold it down. If you're from Chicago and you're Polish, or you're Hungarian and you're from like the West Side, do it, stay there, hold it down. But like everybody else, yeah, sure. If you're from just like Oklahoma, move to Cleveland, I guess.
I'm just like, I just don't think it's sustainable, like California.
It's no what 100. No, it doesn't even make sense.
Like the
Los
whole,
Angeles makes no. There's
when you said
no
like
reason that they
desert
should
cities,
live there.
what is that?
Yeah, the high desert in the Inland Empire. So like Palm Desert, Palmdale. You have there's Palm Springs. There's a lot of palms. None of them are native.
Right.
But yeah, there's plenty of palms. There's like Temecula. There's a bunch of cities.
So like if the water
'cause
just like dried
LA,
up, like
what's that?
if like the water dried up, like would those?
The water dried up. There's no water.
Right. That's what I'm terrified is like I couldn't live there because it's like if literally if like anything happens, like we were in a pandemic and like I'm sure shit got real for a lot of those people, but like so there was a fire and a pandemic, like
fires,
right,
like mad fires,
right. It usually takes like 3 things total to make all bureaucracy and infrastructure to like completely collapse, and like there's already 2 of them, and like if an earthquake happens right now, dude.
I'll be scared all the time. Like if we have the big one, where it's supposed to be like a 9 point or 8 point something or 9 or something like that, because our landlords suck, bruh. And in LA, you have a lot of these apartment buildings where they have a carport that's supported by 2 walls and then just like a pillar like this, right? But it's like a whole room that's supported by that,
right? And
they're not all retrofitted or reinforced in case of earthquakes. And so like my brother's room is literally right above the carport or whatever you call them. And so like something happens, I'm like, bro, if that thing just it's over. And like we have termites that have eaten out parts of like the wood in the window. We live in Beverly Hills. We live in Beverly Hills, right? Not to be like hoity-toity or whatever, but like
you're just
there's no reason.
Like
there's no
places,
reason.
right?
No, I'm saying there's no reason that we should have that and pay as much as we do.
Right.
There's no reason anybody should, but there's no reason that we should be paying exorbitant amounts of money and then also not.
So why are you telling people to stay? Like that's what I don't get. Is like
because
like Cleveland's like so cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's like nothing here, quote unquote, but like.
But there's always something everywhere. I mean, I say stay because if you leave, that's when they turn places that are people's homes into resort towns and ghost towns. Because people are like a lot of Brooklyn, like a lot of New York in general, you have families that own brownstones, right? Like whole buildings, buildings, brownstones and buildings, right? And a developer comes in and is like, here's way more money than you paid for the building.
Right. Gentrify it.
Do you wanna? You know what I'm saying? And then things just are never the same. You bring in yuppies, you bring in whatever, and then it just turns into like trash and then becomes a resort town. And then super rich people from like Saudi Arabia and China buy out whole blocks and stuff, and because they want to come on their vacation trips, and then you literally have ghost towns. Like you have parts of New York and London, even LA, that are just like throughout majority of the year or even all year, you're not going to see anybody on this block because nobody lives in these houses. They're just owned by rich people. Yeah. So like if you live here, if you live in a place, stay in that make that place work. Like because everywhere had, except for Las Vegas, everywhere had a historic population, and the population lived there living a certain way. So
I mean, not in the United States.
What do you mean?
I mean, the only people that naturally lived here are dead or are in reservations.
But I mean, a lot of the places that they lived, we lived with them at first.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, on the East Coast.
On the West Coast. Like a lot of those, throughout a lot of the country. A lot of the places on the West Coast, California, when you learn about California history, there's a whole period called the mission period, right? Yeah. And it's all those different missions
Los Angeles,
up the coast. Yeah. Like Los Angeles, there's the Presidio in Monterey Bay, there's the one in San Francisco, just all up and down the coast, right? And a lot of these places are very close to, if not directly in, historic native territories and lands and living places. Like LA was lived in by natives at a point. Sure. Like Tongva, Chumash, they were there. They lived there. And there's still some of them around, but not really.
So why'd you leave Cleveland then? Yeah.
Bro, because I grew up everywhere. I'm not from nowhere. So, like, I left Cleveland because my mom wanted to leave Cleveland, and I hated Cleveland, and my brother wanted to move somewhere else. And,
so do you like LA?
No.
So where to?
I love New York so much. I love the Hudson River Valley more than any place I've ever been in the world. But going to Europe, though, they take care of their land very well. And not in like a LA way, because if you go to LA, it's just like a lot of parts of it are manicured to the point where you're like, this looks like a postcard. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
nobody wants
America
to live in a
has at least
postcard.
has some parks.
What do you mean?
Is there like natural, like from my understanding, I feel like most land in Europe is private.
That's true. That's true, but it's not though. Like at the same time, like in Sweden, you're legally allowed to forage on private property, like on
really?
even in somebody's yard.
Huh.
Not like obviously you can't walk to somebody's garden in front of their window and be like, let me just grab these peaches.
Yeah, right.
If they have peaches, if they're growing peaches.
Like if they have like a tree, like.
But like,
trees.
yeah, if somebody has like 2 acres or whatever, and there's some boysenberries or something. Are boysenberries real?
I think they are. Yeah.
I know that they're real, but I think that they might be
Poisonous?
a hybridized plant from
I think you might be
California.
right.
But if they have lingonberries or something, you can go and get some lingonberries out of their land, their area that they live on. Same thing I'm pretty sure in Germany too. But like, yeah, there are private lands, but there also are a lot of, it's a very small space, and there are a lot of public lands and public spaces too, though.
The United States does have parks. I mean, that's nice.
Yeah, it is. And one thing I do enjoy about that is that they make people get permits, and so they can preserve a lot of the stuff too.
Yeah, I don't know.
Permits for a lot of parts.
Yeah.
But not all of them, of course. It bothers me so much in California when we go hiking and I see like graffiti on a rock or something. So I'm like, bro, like really? Graffiti and beer bottles and I'm like, you really just had to get drunk right here, like, and then not take it with you?
Just have a fucking garbage bag with you. It's like not hard.
Like, bro, I hope you get bit by a rattlesnake. Dorks, bro, dorks. They're the people that get bit by rattlesnakes too, though.
So, talking about people moving, like, there's just so many people in California. Like, not even that many people, like, move to other places. It probably shifts some states blue. And I don't know how you feel about if Democrats can really, like, cause any change. But, like, I just feel like, yeah, okay.
No, I don't believe so. I mean, yo, I'm a kid that was, like, on IRC chats with Greek kids during the default back in like 2012 and 13, talking to like anarchists, trying to figure out how to
like
get
in
food
Greece
and stuff. Yeah,
damn.
Like,
so I mean, like,
I'm low key. I was a radical. I am a radical mentally, and like I can't wait till the fighting starts. But not like for everybody. I just want like. I can't wait until I see some groups on our side of it, the human side of it, that are like, let's just get this handled already.
I just don't think, I mean, like...
I don't want war to break out in the streets. I don't think that that's good for anybody.
Yeah, I just don't think that... Like, I understand, like, our infrastructure's fucked. I just don't know if anarchism is going to be, like, effective.
I'm not saying anarchy... I'm not saying I'm an anarchist.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just saying, like, sometimes I feel like the fucking Chaz... Like, I was
rocking with anarchists, though.
Yeah,
just because they were, like... It was, like, a crazy moment.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like the Chaz is not productive either. You know what I'm talking about?
You said the Jazz or Chaz?
Chaz.
Who's that?
It's the
defunding the police?
The depoliced zone that was in...
in Portland or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay. You don't think it's working?
No.
Why not?
Because they just had their own anarchist police force.
Yeah.
That, like, just shot some black kids recently.
Yeah.
Sure, the police are shit, but, like, at least they have to wear body cams. Not like it'll actually change anything in terms of, you know, court systems, but there's, like, no discourse at all or recourse for an anarchist that has a gun that shoots anyone that they think is some sort of
100%.
Proud Boy or whatever.
100%. Like, that's why I was making a point about the EU and saying, like, we've been working on that particular type of institution since before World War One.
Yeah. Because,
like, we're all a bunch of kids just trying to really figure out how to make things operate properly.
Sure.
And so when we go from living in our status quo and then they do something like the Chaz or whatever, they are trying to figure it out. So like I get that, and I don't know enough about it to speak to that issue specifically, but
I think it's called the Chaz. I don't want to bullshit, but I thought.
But like it's a symptom of trying to move forward.
Sure.
Not to say that it's a good symptom or that those people know what they're doing, because they probably don't, and they don't have enough people that are from enough, that are experts in enough backgrounds to affect change or create a different type of society or whatever.
Like, I just don't know if the total dismantlement of like current society would be more effective or less.
I don't know that there would be a dismantling of current society. I think that it's just like state borders don't make sense to me. I don't think that when you look at geographic regions or bioregions, mm-hmm. or even if you look at like tribal regions before we started making all these arbitrary borders,
sure,
state borders don't make any sense to me at all. I have no understanding at all of why New Mexico is like a perfect square or why Texas has those straight lines.
I mean, most of it was like slavery.
Goofiness.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like anything below the, what was it, 44th parallel or whatever, was a slave state. So they like, okay, for every free state, there's going to be a slave state. Right. So they like, okay, we're just fucking making a square over here.
Right.
Like, no one lives here, but we're, because...
the thing is, people lived there.
Because Oregon wants to be a state, we're just going to...
Yeah. Oregon's goofy.
Yeah.
But no shade to Oregon. People, that's a different story. But, the state borders, they don't make sense to me. When I think about what I think of the future is I'm looking at Los Angeles. Let's talk Los Angeles, okay? Mm-hmm. Los Angeles is a metro area. We have Orange County, we have Long Beach, we have Anaheim, and I think Anaheim might be in Orange County. I don't even know. But we have Orange County, we have Long Beach, we have LA, and then we have Ventura County, and then we have like Kern County or whatever, mm-hmm. just like the Inland Empire, the desert and everything. It's a huge region. People come into Los Angeles proper every single day to work. People are coming from this county to LA. People are coming from LA to this county. UC Irvine is a part of the Los Angeles metro area. This is a cultural continuum at this point. You know what I'm saying? San Francisco Bay Area with Berkeley and, not Berkeley the university, but Berkeley the city, Oakland, Santa Cruz, Daly City, mm-hmm. all of that entire area, mega regions as far as like metropolises, mm-hmm. that's the way we're moving forward, in my opinion. And so
that just sounds like some city-state shit.
It is kind of like city-states, but like I'm not saying that it should be governed in that way. I'm saying that I'm saying that there wouldn't be a dismantling of society. It would just be this is where people are at. Mainly, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so if we're going to build forward, we need to look at the redistribution of people and wealth.
I just think that if the government is not strong, corporations are just going to take over.
I agree with that absolutely. So there has to be some way to get around that, but I'm just saying that I don't feel like our election process and our states and
sure.
our borders and how we treat population and everything, that doesn't make sense to me.
No.
So as far as dismantling of our society, I don't think it is a dismantling, is all I'm saying. It's just like a shifting in a different direction.
I mean, I just think that we need to change the ways that we elect people, because I think that just a two-party system is not effective in actually electing anyone.
I just don't see the purpose for Nebraska, bro. I just don't see why it exists. I just don't get it. I don't get why Wyoming exists.
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be a compromise. The United States is built upon compromise.
Right.
So you have to create some sort of electoral system so that the cities don't override the rural populations that live in
Right,
Wyoming.
But see, the thing about the rural populations is then we get back into environmental discussion at that point. And it's like, as far as how we're going to feed ourselves in the future, there has to be, from a governmental standpoint, and I'm not talking communism or anything, there has to be some sort of like redistricting. There has to be some sort of like actual standardization of how we treat our land. Like we have to start thinking objectively and efficiently about how we're going to use what we have.
Yeah.
Because like I said, most people live in XYZ places, and they have their own mega regions that are forming naturally, and everything that's in between that, if you live there and because there's no point for, like, I don't know, some random city like Topeka or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason for it to want to or try to work towards being Asheville, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? There's no reason for it to try and be Kansas City. There's just no reason. So, like, there has to be a new way of looking at how we use our land resources. It's all about looking at how we reuse our resources.
Yeah, I mean, the world is getting bigger, so we don't need a mall every 10 minutes away anymore.
We don't need to have every single town and city across this country be its own micro New York. Like, it doesn't have to work like that.
But that is going to be interesting, because I do feel like, well, that's kind of what I was asking, is that I think currently the United States is going to be operating for a minute. So I think that it is good if people left California, because there is such a
need for people in other places.
Yes, for one, yes. And two, because like California is almost like a brain drain. Like New York is kind of like a brain drain of like communities that,
I mean, as global
it's just
warming,
like ineffective.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that part. But as we were talking about this too, as climate change continues to get worse, and as we go further into it in our timeline, population centers are going to shift anyway. And the only places that are going to be able to last for a longer amount of time are the Great Lakes and are some cities in the Rockies.
Right.
That's where population centers are going to shift toward.
Right.
And
you
then,
think so?
I know so. Like, for sure. I had to do a couple of reports on it. But, like, that's where it's going to move to. So, people are going to leave California anyway. People are going to leave New York anyway.
I just hope people do it sooner rather than later, because I feel like...
Build the infrastructure up early?
Well, that for one. And two, if something... I want people to move consistently away from California before something bad happens.
Why you hate California so much? Like another state?
Because it's like... There's droughts, there's earthquakes, like if you can name a natural...
There was a drought in Tennessee.
Yeah, but like it's
was
not...
What's your argument?
Like, were there like wildfires in Tennessee?
Yeah. There were wildfires in the Smokies.
All I know is that they were blaming the overcast days that we were having in Ohio from California.
Oh, yeah?
And like all of that.
But see, we only had the wildfires. We not only had the wildfires. We have the wildfires for one reason, because of killing natives and not allowing natives to do what they do.
Yeah, I get you.
For one part, because we live in LA at least, we live right on the border of desert and then chaparral forest, right?
Right.
Like shrubby hills that are evolved to burn.
We should have controlled burns, but because people live in the places where we should be having controlled burns, it doesn't happen.
No, not even just that. We don't have controlled burns because white people came to California and were like, why are you guys burning this beautiful land? Because white people used to get... I think there was a photographer, maybe. What was his... I think it was a Magnum photographer. I'm just take it with a grain of salt, whatever. A Magnum photographer that got tuberculosis and was diagnosed or was prescribed to go to like the Yosemite area.
Really?
Yeah, something like that, just to get fresh air, right? White people came to California and were like, this is untapped. There are coal mines all throughout the Appalachians, and that whole line cuts off the east from the Midwest, and the Midwest is factories and this, that, and the other. Yeah. We come further west and it's just virgin land, and you guys are burning it. Stop burning it.
Gotcha.
But now people definitely live up in those mountains. But if there were controlled burns, their houses would be fine.
Right.
I mean, they might smell smoke for like a day, but that
Better
would stop
like
them from
weeks,
having to leave their homes because their homes get burned down.
Right.
And it's detrimental to everybody. But climate change compounds that, and like, droughts compound that, and droughts because of climate change, and pushed off winter rains because of climate change all compound that.
Yeah.
So it's not. I don't think it's not that California is a problem because of its population in that regard, because it is in a lot of other regards.
I mean, I just feel like there's so many people there that, like, if something happened, a lot of people would die.
Yeah, that part's true. That part's true. You know what's really cool? This is completely off tangent.
All right.
But I was reading about San Francisco because I used to really love San Francisco so much. I still do. If San Francisco was as big as and as powerful and storied as New York, it'd be the best city on the planet.
Interesting.
But so back in early San Francisco, you can read about accounts of the entire bay just being filled with like ships, like sailing ships, like big sailing ships, and there were like brothels and bars and like housing and stuff just like in the bay. So like if you could imagine the buildings and stuff and then like people living out in the water at the same time just like in the bay, it's just such a sick thought to me. But
that kind of changed after the fires, or
yeah, it changed after the fires, and then it also changed after.
Didn't they just like bulldoze all of the buildings like into the bay?
I don't know about that, but probably.
I thought they like did that and then they just like built on top of it or something.
Probably, but yeah, no, it also changed because Sausalito, which is like right across from like San Francisco proper, which is like a really wealthy white neighborhood, is just like we don't want to see that all the time. And because people don't like vice is like a symbol of a bad neighborhood. If there's bars and brothels and stuff, it means that it's poor and dangerous over here. So they were like, get this out of here. We're nice, peaceable Christian men and women.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Same thing happened in LA.
Do you think the broken window theory or philosophy makes sense at all?
What was that?
It's basically the idea that
I know the name.
they like did this sociology experiment where there was a van and they put them in two neighborhoods, both of them with like similar like conditions like economic and everything, and they broke the windows for both vans, and one they repaired like almost immediately, and the other one they just like let. And they said that like crime like increased by like a pretty significant amount in the place where the window was broken. And they kind of theorized that like if you don't have some sort of like outward projection of like, I don't know,
peace,
prosperity, that
right.
like it can somehow indicate like this is like advertised that this
like
is
it
like
propagates more of it.
Yeah,
no, absolutely.
Okay.
I agree with that for sure, because like when you drive through and you see liquor stores everywhere, and there's not a grocery store anywhere,
or like there's dollar stores everywhere.
That too. And then like even like when I was living in Flatbush, there was a grocery store that I went to often, and a lot of the produce was like moldy, like in the grocery store. Have you ever been to Giant Eagle and picked up anything that was moldy?
No.
Never. Have you ever been to like, I'm trying to think of other grocery store, Mark's, and picked up something that was moldy? Never. Like it just you don't see that. But if you go to like maybe a Food for Less in LA, or the grocery stores that I went to, some of the ones I went to in New York, like produce is subpar sometimes, unless you're getting it from like a legit African or Caribbean place, and it's a whole different story.
Right.
But yeah, when you live in a community and you don't see anything that shows that anybody is putting anything into it, nobody cares about it, nobody cares what happens to it, yeah, of course it propagates and perpetuates crime, and it's poverty doing what poverty does.
Yeah. Community, man.
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It's the biggest thing, and people don't realize it.
But I mean, like, and that's the thing is, how do you propagate a community, like, especially like in this internet era where everyone's just like looking at their phones, you know?
Was that a dig? Was that a dig?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I'm just saying, like I'm not particularly religious, but I do have to say that like religion does allow for people to get together that can like share in like a community and have somewhat similar like-minded perspective, and allow them to like aid one another whenever they're like in times of need. So I do support churches. If there was some way to have that secularly, that would be dope.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and honestly, I can't speak to because I've struggled with it a lot. One of the one question that trips me up all the time in life is where are we? Like it trips me up ridiculously,
Sure.
and so that question has made me question religion and stuff. But as far as like a tool, like as a tool, religion definitely gives people that sense of community that you're talking about, and it allows for not just like camaraderie community, like people that are peer groups, but it also allows for intergenerational community, which is the most important because your old folks need to talk to my youths, you know? And that's the only way that we can have a peaceable community.
For sure.
Because when us as younger people talk bad about our parents and like other ourselves from our parents, it's like, bruh, they were our age at one point too. And like if you were our age when they were our age, if at the same time, you probably would have been doing what they were doing.
Probably.
Like
Yeah.
it's all contextual, and you can't blame people for context all the time.
Yeah, people hate to give people context.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this
Like-
person's like automatically bad. It's like, no, like,
It's like this person grew up in a place that you probably could not handle.
yeah.
You probably would have killed yourself if you grew up how this person grew up. No, like for real
yeah.
though. Like there are a lot of people that really, really, really have something to say about people, and they could not have even fathomed growing up how they grew up.
For sure.
Like when I talk to my grandmother, not even when I talk to my grandmother, it's just wild to be in
Like,
her house
Yeah.
and see her cooking something or asking me to cut a carrot or something, and just thinking like this woman is the same woman that told me she had a blister that grew up so big on her hand that when a Russian soldier gave her an apple, she could barely hold it, but she cried because he gave it to her. Or the same woman that told me that there was a pregnant woman when they were forced to walk from Hungary that gave birth on the way, and then the baby died like that.
Yeah.
And then they all had to bury it.
Damn.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like she grew up with people like bombs and guns and death everywhere.
Yeah.
Like everywhere. And then on the flip side of that, so much of my black family from like proper black communities in Clarksville and in Cleveland, because on my mom's side, my mom's dad's family came to Cleveland in 1944, and then on my dad's side, I'm not sure when they got here, but they've been here forever. All in East Cleveland. You know what I'm saying? And it was never good.
Yeah.
It was never good over there. So like, just people have so much to say, and you could not even have survived that.
Yeah.
Probably. And it's just like, shut up, bro.
Yeah. I don't know if how you fix that. I agree. I never thought about
You just have
like
to
the
integrate.
intergenerational stuff. That makes sense, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's easy to say we just need to integrate, but it's just not happening. So like there needs to be something that. Like,
I mean, that I'm dealing with that with my little brother right now, because us moving to Los Angeles, we don't have our family
Right.
around, right? And when we were here, we had my grandfather around and my dad around, and then he has older brothers and sisters and whatever. But we didn't have like a whole lot of grandparents and young children,
right.
because when children have to take care of children, for one, that automatically instills responsibility in other things.
Yep.
If you teach them to do that, because
Right.
sometimes they'll just be whatever about it and won't
Passive.
want anything.
Yeah.
But also when kids are exposed to older people, same situation. You know what I'm saying? And that does so much to teach people about to create a sense of responsibility in people for their community and for the people that are next to them. And when you don't have that, like we don't have in LA, you start to like how you hear people talk about, or like boomer this and boomer that, you know what I'm saying? Or like whatever and whatnot. You know what I mean? You get my point. So I've been trying to get Tair. I was excited to bring Tair here so he could be around my dad and be around my older brother TJ, who's like 30 at this point. You know what I'm saying? Different stuff like that. And then go to Tennessee and work with my cousin Tori, who lives in Chattanooga, and he works in East Chattanooga, which is like a super impoverished community. And so just being exposed to different sides of life and different ages and understandings, bro, that's how you create an environment. When you learn about what people are, it's easier to coexist with who people are.
don't you? I don't know. I totally get what you're saying, but also at the same time, I've interacted with some really privileged, like, older people, and it, like, just drives me insane because
that's true too. But like, were they? What was I gonna say? Were they insular? Were they to themselves? Were they not? You know what I mean?
I mean, they usually have like a community that they identify with, which makes it easier. I don't know, like it's hard to, like I said, like everyone has their own struggles for sure, but it just seems like sometimes there's almost like a gated community that the older generations sometimes propagate. That
I feel like it might be, to make it about race again, like a black-white thing, or just like a. But that also ties into like socioeconomics.
Yeah.
Because like if you are lower middle class white, lower class white, maybe even middle class white sometimes, you still have to convene with different people often. But like when you're black, or you are, for most black people because of socioeconomic situations, or you're Latino or whatever, you have to learn everybody else's situation. That's a super big thing that I don't think that many white people or non-black people understand about black people, is that in America, black people had to learn everything there is to learn about white people, because we were literally tilling your yards.
Right.
We were cooking for you and your kids. We were cleaning your houses a lot of the time. And on the other side of that, the poor whites, we were living right next to them, and they were sharecropping or being indentured servants and then working their way out or whatever while we were still slaves. Right. Whatever the situation is, but we've always had to learn who everybody else is. And so did Latinos at one point, so did Asian people at one point, Chinese people specifically at one point, but white people never had to branch out at all. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, they never had to learn.
Well, they were the insular community, everyone else.
Because they were hiring everybody.
Right, exactly.
So I feel like it's different when I'm saying like old folks, because I'm thinking about like, I know my grandma Cherry like worked in people's houses, you know what I'm saying?
Like someone that has like some sort of like perspective that
exactly. It's not just like I grew up, because she didn't grow up anything like me, right? You know what I'm saying? So there's like actual something to gain from that, and they're privileged in their own way, but they also like there's a real story there. Yeah.
On that note, I think we'll cut it. We just did 3 hours.
Sick. I hope you got some good stuff to
probably say goodbye to the people.
Bye, people. Take care of yourselves. Don't drink too much water, because you probably won't be able to sleep well. That's my advice.
Overhydration.
Yeah, overhydration is not good.
I feel like I underhydrate. I feel like I wake up thirsty.
To work on. All right. I do too sometimes.
Yeah. I have to pee in the morning.
There's a perfect balance.
I have to pee in the morning, and I still feel thirsty.
Really?
Like, what the fuck's up with that?
I do have a dry mouth.
When I wake up, yeah.
I don't know. I woke up at like 5 in the morning.
I'm just terrified that like I'm dehydrating myself, and I'm just like making my kidneys fail, you know. Jeez. Yeah. All right. Bye, everyone.
Yeah. Peace, y'all.